All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Glitch Cube. We're a gaming podcast, and each week we take a deeper look into the art of video games. I'm Christian.
And I'm Chris.
And today we are going over something that me and Chris both actually enjoy quite a bit. It's a genre that a lot of people love playing. We love punishment in this world. We love to get our asses kicked in games. It's roguelikes, I like them, so I call them roguelikes, but I know there's a difference between the two. I'm pretty much illiterate when it comes to those, or ignorant to those two terms. So I was hoping that, Chris, you can kind of let me know what the difference is, and maybe let our audience know who aren't completely aware what the difference between roguelikes and roguelites are.
Yeah, I feel like it's something that a lot of people kind of mix up, and I see a lot of people also get very gatekeepy about the two different terms, but the difference basically is a roguelike is you have progression, right? So when you die, you usually will have points that carry over and makes your next run a little bit better. Kind of, I don't want to say easy mode because, I mean, you look at some games and they put curses or boons on that diminish things, right? To make it harder but better rewards. So it's basically progression, whereas a roguelite is you try to advance as far as you can with what you find. You die, you start back completely from zero. There's nothing helping you or anything like that. More of the old school kind of way.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
Which I technically don't prefer, but I used to. I feel like once you start going into the path of progression and all that, it makes the game a lot more fun. But that's just me. And then, I mean, the third really genre is mystery dungeons, but that's something we'll touch on at a different time because that's a whole different beast.
Yeah, that's a completely different type of play style altogether. But yeah, I mean, personally, I prefer roguelikes, Like, just for the progression standpoint that you mentioned, and that makes so much more sense now whenever you lay it out like that. Coming from an RPG background, progression is everything, right? So
yeah,
being able to not just die and have to start over fresh and clean, which is still fun in its own sense, right? There's a sense of challenge there that is enjoyable. I just prefer allowing myself to have some sort of progression to make each run different, to make it to kind of tailor it to what you need, right? And that does have a little bit more appeal to me, at least. It's still challenging as hell, and they always find a way to make the balance there work really great with it. But it does allow you to continue to grow as a player and learn as you play, which is really nice.
Yeah, and I think it's fun because say you're in the first area, right, and you keep dying a lot, but with progression, you start getting powerful. You're able to kind of steamroll for the most part, and it feels good. For me, if I can destroy the first area really quickly and easy without worrying about it, it's fun. Because you're getting back at all the times that you died there. I do like roguelites sometimes. I think maybe years ago I enjoyed it more because I'm looking at the more modern takes on them. I guess you could say Binding of Isaac is a good example because nothing really carries over when you die. You're always starting fresh. And I mean, there is some sort of progression because every time you get further, you unlock more and more stages, but to me, I feel like that's the perfect example of starting fresh every run, trying something new. Or you look at Dungeons of Dreadmore, there's so many old school types out there, and it's, I don't know, I guess having to learn mechanics in that regard, it's just, I don't really have time to do that anymore. Whereas this progression, it makes it where it's easier for people with busier lives to actually advance and get more enjoyment out of it, in my opinion. I don't know. I feel like the other one, you need to set aside a bunch of time to
not just that. I
get
feel
really
like
involved.
Like you mentioned, we don't have a lot of time to play these games, and this seems to be something that we harp on quite a bit in our episodes. Is that time is precious, and we both work full time. We both have a lot of responsibilities, but it also like allows you to learn the game and feel like you're actually accomplishing something. Like you mentioned, you're getting stuck in the first area and just keep continuously dying. But while you die, you gain little things like treasures or whatever it may be to help level up your character. And then when you come back in there and you're able to just fully wreck house and just take out everything, it's a really rewarding experience that, I mean, I really enjoy that aspect of it where I feel like I'm making progress. I'm moving forward towards the goal of the end game, which, I mean, with these games, there really is no end game. You just, once you beat it, you do it all over again and find different combinations. But it feels like you're moving in the right direction, or in the way that you're supposed to be going. And for me, at least, like with the roguelites, the ones where it's like Binding of Isaac and whatnot, where it's a full reset, it feels very kind of like retro and punishing. Where it just, I don't know, there's something about that where it's fun for a while and it's fun for a little bit, and you have to be in that right mindset to just get your ass kicked over and over again. But I don't know. There's something about it where, like, after a few runs, I'm done. I'm exhausted because I'm just tired of getting beat up all the time. You need to have that nice balance of reward for the player to make them want to continue playing and make them, like, okay with dying and being like, okay, well, you know what? I know what I messed up on, but now I have this, which will help me out in this situation. And, like, let's go again. I might not get that same room, but now I know that if I get into that situation or something similar, I know how to handle it properly. And I have the tools I need to handle it properly.
Yeah, I'm a person that I like seeing growth and stuff. And when I have to keep starting from scratch, I feel like I'm wasting my time. Like, it's sad because I know there's a lot of games out there that are good and there's a lot to see, but I want to see growth in my character. I want to see it like you were saying about how RPGs were used to seeing like growth, and it feels weird starting from scratch every time. Yeah,
imagine like Final Fantasy, where if you game over, do you have to start over again? Who would play that?
Right.
I like that. I would go nowhere with that. I would hate Final Fantasy, but like it's just me.
I mean, I hate when I play an RPG and I forgot to save and I die and then I have to retrack like 4 hours of time. It's like, that's how I feel about these games. It's like I can spend like 2 hours advancing very far in the game, but when I die, it's like you don't get anything for it. Like, I guess the thrill of trying to survive and all that is there, but I mean, if I want punishment for dying like that, I'll just play Dark Souls, because at least that you're kind of advancing, you know?
You still get a reward at the end. So I think that's the big difference between it, which is a huge like facet of it, is that reward at the end. You're rewarded for playing this game. You're rewarded for taking on the challenge. Even if you die, you still get something out of it, whether it's experience for you, the player, or it's actually like a boon or bounty or a tool that you can bring into the next one, or unlocking a new weapon. Right? Like those aspects make me, the player, want to continue playing. And it, like, that's the same thing with pretty much any new game or any game out there now, is you get thrust into a challenge. Like you get thrown into a dungeon. It's a super hard dungeon that might be optional, right? But at the end, you get some great ability that you need, or, I mean, you might not need it, but you want it to continue moving on with the quest, because in games, we need to be in control, right? That's kind of the whole point of playing a game, is that sense of feeling in control and feeling powerful and giving yourself confidence that you might not have in the real world, right? And that's exactly what these roguelikes are doing, is they're allowing you to get that confidence and be a better player, even though in the beginning it might be a very punishing experience. You're learning from it, just like you would from life. Life always knocks you down, right? But it's how you get back up and handle that situation again. So I think it's a really cool metaphor for everything that we deal with in our everyday life. It's no matter how many times you get knocked down, you can get back up because you learn something and you can take it with you on your next life or your next challenge.
Damn, I'm pretty inspired by that.
That's right.
It's to me, like, when I look at the genre as a whole, I think if there's one game that I think that really balances both worlds somewhat well, I think maybe Slay the Spire, just because you unlock things for your next run, but it's cards, right? So it's not like you're gonna have these right away. It's still by chance that you'll find these cards in time, not like, say, a lot of other roguelikes that each time you progress, like, say, Rogue Legacy, where you build up your skill tree of, like, always increased health or increased criticals that are always going to be there. With Slay, it's kind of a chance of when that new strong card is going to show up. And I like that because it still creates a challenge. It still makes for a different run every time, but it's still unforgiving, and I love that. And I mean, Slay to me is still one of the tops of the genre. Even though I don't really care for card ones too much anymore, that one is just perfection.
Card ones are really interesting because they, like you said, they allow for that growth, but it's the chance of growth now. It's not known growth. It's not known boons or bounties. It's the opportunity to potentially get that. You're throwing a new random feature into your next run, and you can start kind of thinking like, okay, now I have this card unlocked. Maybe I can start setting up this kind of build, but it doesn't mean you're actually going to get it. So you always have that risk of like, okay, I pick up this card in hopes of potentially getting this one, which will give me this combo, and maybe I'll make my poison rogue deck or whatever it is, right? But you might not actually get those cards. So, like, let's say halfway through a run, it's like, well, crap, now I have to pivot. And now I have to think on my toes and change things up a little bit to fit what I'm currently getting, which is, it's cool. I mean, it reminds me of playing chess, right? Where you have an idea in your head. You have a goal or a strategy before you walk in, but you now have to react to the situations around you. And it makes you pivot and quickly change your strategies to try and progress further. And it's a really interesting mechanic that I feel like, I mean, for me at least, I find that more in card game roguelikes than I do in other ones. Like you said, most other roguelikes, they have that skill tree or something like that carries over from run to run. Whereas with cards, it just gives you the random chance of that increased stat, but not necessarily you're going to get it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's very interesting.
I think really the difference between like the card game versions versus the regular like dungeon crawling ones is it's skill versus luck. And for a long time, I preferred luck because I thought it always made for interesting things. As I've gotten better at these kind of games, though, I'm really enjoying skill just because it's more so dependent on, can you dodge fast enough? Can you create a strong build and like avoid their attacks? And to me, I feel like I guess they're both rewarding in their own ways because it is a really cool time when you're creating an ultra powerful deck and you can just kind of not have to worry about anything. But I've definitely, I don't know, I feel like my taste has gone back to playing like more traditional roguelikes, at least, just because there's so many out there now.
There are a lot out there, and you're starting to see some really interesting innovations in those genres, right? Like, I mean, for instance, we were talking about the card style roguelikes, right? That there's some new ones out there that are kind of taking that formula and twisting it, right? And making it something a little bit more interesting, in my opinion. Like, I don't know if we've talked about this before, but like Krumit's Tale, that game is...
Oh, yeah, you told me about that.
The game is fantastic. I love this game. And it's a card roguelike, okay? But it's something different where it's not like you're playing cards from your hand. You can build up a hand by taking equipment off of the game board. So you're playing on a game board the whole time. And you see what all the enemies out there in front of you, and you see which next card is going to drop into the game board if you create an empty slot for it. And you want to just continuously, you want to take out all the enemies, and if you don't use all your abilities that are available to you, then you get extra gems, which is just extra points on your run to get a higher score, right? Which help you level up and unlock new cards for the class that you're playing, which is actually really cool. So it kind of incentivizes you to think a little bit more strategically about it, where you're not just using everything that's available to you. So you want to kind of use less in order to unlock things for your next runs, which is really cool in my opinion. And like Krumit does it so well where it's seamless. And like the progression system is really cool. They have different classes. They're kind of based on typical RPGs or D&D style, where you have a warrior, a mage, a rogue, a necromancer, a cleric, and a hunter. The hunter just got released not too long ago, which is actually a very strange mechanic that's built in the hunter. And I can go into it more later, but it's hard. The hunter is definitely the hardest one, and it's kind of a little bit annoying with the fact that you actually have to pay for the hunter. So all the other ones, like, they unlock as you play through the game, but for the hunter, you have to pay for it. And
like real money, or pay for like in-game
real
money?
Like real money.
Oh, okay.
And when you pay for it, like when you play the hunter, it's hard. Like it's definitely something different where it adds like a new challenge to it. And I know that like in later builds, when you get more cards and more minions that you can play with, it's better. But getting to that point after paying, like, I don't know, there's something about like paying money for it. Like I want everything unlocked. Like I've already paid for it. Why am I going to have to go through this grind again? But, you know, it's part of the game. It's part of the meta, and it's how this company's making their money. And I don't feel bad paying for these guys too much, because this company and these style of games are just so interesting that, like, I want to see more of them. Not just because, like, the artwork is fantastic. It's kind of like Adventure Time, but a little bit more gritty and a little more dark. But then which is great. But then it also it also has really cool mechanics for a card game that I haven't really seen before, that are really interesting to me, and it makes you want to kind of play more and more. And every time I recommend it to somebody, and when they actually play it, they get really into it. And like I've gotten texts from a couple of different friends, like days later, they're like, I hate you. I hate you for recommending this game, because this is all I'm playing now. Because it's so easy to just kind of go through your runs quickly and just kind of try and figure out the next best strategy and try different classes. And you want to learn more about them, because each one has their own weird little nuances, which are really fun to play with.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
I'll have to check that one out.
I definitely recommend it. And for everyone who hasn't tried it out or has seen it and they're curious about it, give it a shot. It's really, really fun. Like, I mean, if you like playing a rogue, they have a stealth mechanic built in where randomly whenever you engage in an enemy, you might get stealth for your first round, which means you deal extra damage and you get to go first, which is really nice. Or like if you're playing the cleric has a really crazy thing where it transforms between blessed and cursed. And then you play with these cards that come out that change depending on your stat or your status, where you have blessings or curses on the board that can, like, curses can hurt you physically, but also give you like bigger output for damage or different abilities, whereas blessings will help heal you, but they might not necessarily help you take care of the enemies that are on the board, which is the ultimate goal, is take out everything on the board to progress to the next stage, right? So it's a cool balance that they have there. It's really fun, but definitely something to kind of check out. And it's hard. It is really hard, because there's going to be times where you run into a situation where like you just see your death in front of you and you're like, well, I can't do anything. Like that's it. So it definitely adds to a different type of challenge that other card games like Slay the Spire might not have. Slay the Spire feels very fast paced, right? Where like you see your cards, you just go like boom, 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 boom. Play all my cards, done. Next hand, let's go, right? Like whereas Krumit's Tale, you're actually like being very slow and methodical with your movements. You're really thinking about it. You're looking at the card that's going to drop next and starting to think about the strategies like, okay, well, if I go after this guy, I'm going to get dropped to about 4 health. I can take 1 hit from this dude, and then hopefully this new weapon that drops, I can buy it with the money I got from beating this guy. Like, you start thinking about that, and you start playing chess in your brain against yourself, which is, I don't know, I always find that really interesting.
Yeah, I definitely need to play more, like, card-based ones, like, because other than Slay, I think the only other one I really have like any time into would be Solitarica, which that's a fun little take on solitaire. It's like an RPG roguelike solitaire game, and it's solitaire, so you can't do anything too crazy, but the ingenuity of attack cards with it make it really interesting because you have to keep making stacks, and then those stacks damage the enemy. And there's classes in there, and each class obviously has a different specialty for dealing with it, and then there's some penalties with each one, and it's really, I don't know, I find it really interesting how this genre has really evolved, especially in the past like 6 to 8 years, because I remember like when Binding of Isaac came out, I was like, oh my god, this game is different. It's cool. You know, it's stylish compared to games of the genre from before. And then some other big ones came out like over time, and it was just like cool seeing the evolution in it, you know? I mean, from you start off with Rogue all the way to, say, Binding of Isaac, and then you look at more modern stuff like Dead Cells or Hades, and it's like the jump in how different these games are. It's crazy. You know, we have platformers mixed with it. We have RPGs. We have first-person ones like Immortal Redneck and Strafe. Oops. And, you know, it's like, it's cool. I've really come to enjoy the first-person ones as well. I think
I haven't played any first-person ones yet.
They're different, right? Like Ziggurat, you're basically a magician who finds stuff, and you get certain spells. And then I feel like Strafe is more your traditional, like roguelike, roguelite, and it's where you don't really get anything progressive-wise. It's more so you just find all your stuff, make it die, and then go back. And then my personal favorite's Immortal Redneck, but that's because it has like the streaming capability with it, where your viewers on Twitch can decide what kind of stuff you're gonna find. And I actually had a lot of fun streaming that, because it's like people watching you can either screw you over or they can like make you invincible. And there was like one stream where I was just invincible for the most part, because they kept giving me like damage plus health. Like it was really cool, and there's a lot of heroes to choose from, and the bosses are actually kind of cool in it. Like these first person games feel like your typical kind of shooter RPG, but it's a really different take on the genre, and I love seeing innovation in this genre in general, because there's so many different things, and they're basically have touched on every genre now at this point.
It's interesting,
for better or for worse.
It's interesting that they can actually include every type of genre into a roguelike, or convert it into that, right? Like you can tell a deep story in these, or you can just have a quick run and gun or a hack and slash. You can throw in platformers. You can have like a puzzle style roguelike that, right? Like it's or even like a point and click one, right? Like they have so many different styles out there now, and I love it. That's fascinating to me that they can incorporate all these different type of genres that you would normally not even think of as that, and it just works. That formula just
Oh,
works,
yeah.
and it works really well. So it's really cool.
I think because it can be a different game every time, you know, and I think that's really the motivation behind it. And that's why you can really blend that with any genre, you know. It's fun to progress.
Yeah. Like with progression and telling a story, like it's so much that's what I'm loving right now. Like seeing where they are now. Like you mentioned Hades, right? Hades to me is the epitome of telling a story while giving really interesting gameplay in a roguelike. I think it's fantastic. Like the progression system they have in it is so much fun where like when you die you don't even get mad anymore. It's just like, well, that's okay because now I actually have this nectar that I can go and, you know, talk to this guy. I'll go talk to Achilles and he'll give me a new like equipment mod or whatever it may be. And it just kind of like enhances the world around you, and it makes you feel like you're playing like an old school RPG almost, where you're learning and growing with these characters and figuring out like the personality of all the different gods and whatnot, and through playing the game and through dying and through progressing, which is really interesting. And I feel like I haven't really seen that in a roguelike where they have so much character development in it. Like it's crazy.
A lot of time, like mostly with roguelikes, they don't focus on a story, you know, because I mean, it's a progression system. You keep dying. There's not really, I don't think I've really ever seen any that had a deep story. You know, it's usually little minor additions and that's it.
Or it's like little bits of lore you find along the way, right? Like you read a tablet and it's like, oh, this is the world I'm in, or right? Like it's not really like unfolding something in front of you. It's like it's there if you want to look for it, but it's not part of it. It's not integrated.
It's not a big deal. Yeah. It's there to make it so like you have motivation to keep going, but is the story actually like big or necessary? No.
Right.
And I mean, that's kind of most of the games were like that. And then with Hades, it's different. It's like you actually have a story developing and it changes almost with every run. I mean, it's always going to have the same ending in the end, but it's definitely a different take and I'm really loving it. It's beautiful, and I mean, Supergiant just does amazing games in general. Yeah. I knew I was going to love this game because I don't think I've really played a game by them I didn't like. I think I've enjoyed every one of their games.
Or they put a lot of thought into their games, and they there's so much, like Bastion was fantastic. Have you ever played that one?
Oh, yeah.
I love it. The soundtrack, the voiceover work, like everything about it was just so intense, and you just loved every second of it, and you just wanted to keep going through that game just to hear more of the music or to hear the narrator talk again. Like that was a big thing. I was like, oh yeah, I get to hear this guy. He's like, oh, and our dark hero comes back again, right? Like I love that kind of stuff. Like it's so cool because it's just like little tidbits of enjoyment that you don't typically get. Or I feel like it. That game could have easily just been a no story, nothing, just run through the map, right? Like a little dungeon crawler.
Oh, yeah.
But they found a way to make it more and enhance it and really get people excited about playing it and learn about the world that they're living in and get like invested, right? I think that's the best word for it. They Supergiant knows how to get players invested in their games. And they do it right. And if you're a designer out there and you're looking for you're trying to make something small, but you want to grab an audience's attention, look at Supergiant, study their games, dissect them and figure out what they're doing because they're doing it right. Like they really found out a way to get players involved in their games with seemingly simple mechanics. Because really, the gameplay isn't that crazy, right? Like it's really smooth. It really is. It's very smooth. It's really well planned out, really well thought out, but it's nothing like extensive. It's simple in a certain sense, right? But it's advanced in the way that they let the player unfold the game in front of them. If that makes sense.
No, I agree with you. I feel like Hades is kind of a mixture of all the games they've made put into this genre, especially.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I can see the flavors of Bastion. I can see the flavors of Transistor. Like, I haven't played Pyre. I think they did Pyre, but I see like a little bit of everything, and I feel like this is like their perfected combination, and I'm blown away by it, really. Like, I knew I was gonna like it, but it's just, damn, there's so much, like you said, the story, and then the amount of like different progressive trees in this game is just crazy. Like, it's damn good.
So,
and it's something I've been craving.
What's been the most surprising? Because I have something that surprised the hell out of me in this game already. But for you, I'm curious, what's the most surprising thing that you found in Hades?
I was pissed off about the whole lava actually hurting you, but I thought that was going to be like a wall. I think for me, it's like every time you die, like the NPC that talks to you when you first revive, they talk about every way that you die. So like, say you died by standing in the lava. They're like, oh, you were standing in lava burning your feet. Like, you should have known better.
Right.
And then say you do it again. They literally say the same thing, but like, oh, why did you do that again? Like,
there's different variants. Right.
Yeah, and this game is all like voiceover too, so it's like this person basically voiced for every situation, which is crazy.
Yeah, every enemy, every way that you could potentially die in it, they have different variants on the voiceover acting, and that just shows like polish right there. Like that's a clean game. It's so well done. I mean, for me, like. I don't know if you've run into these rooms yet where it has the both gods, right? Where you can pick one or the other. Have you seen those rooms yet?
Do you mean like the different doors you can pick between different like boons?
No,
or?
like so you get, in order to progress, you get two different doors and you can go to one or the other. Sometimes you'll get a door that has two god symbols on it. And whenever you go in there...
Oh, I was reading about that.
Yeah, when you go in there, you can pick between one or the other god, right? And it's... Man, this is the craziest thing ever, and I love it, and it's so clever, and I hate it at the same time because I've died in that room every single time, but I want to go into there always. So when you pick one god, the other god gets jealous. And they get pissed off, and then they make that room into like an impossible challenge room where that god's actually fighting you. So, yeah, like, so there's one room that I just recently went into. It was between Artemis and Poseidon, and I picked Artemis because I really like her critical attack builds. And Poseidon got jealous as hell. He got pissed off and then unleashed like a horde of enemies. So there was more enemies than I've ever seen in a room ever. And then at the same time, there's like a water jet that is following you at like super speed that hits you so damn hard. So you're trying to run away from this water jet that's Poseidon, pissed off at you for not picking his boon, and then also trying to take out these enemies. So the whole room is just there to just freaking kill you. So it's, if you want a challenge, go into those rooms, but it's really like such an interesting mechanic to show the jealousy of the gods and to really like placate that idea, because that's something that's written in history, is the gods are fickle, right? They get jealous when you pick one over the other, and that's what happens in Olympus whenever there's so many gods. It's like, oh, really? You went for my brother? Okay, well, my brother's a dick and I hate him, so I'm going to kill you now because you decided to go with him instead of me, right? Like, It's so crazy. Or they would even like trick each other or just to get one up over the other one because they're immortal. They can't die. So what do? They use mortals and other beings to fight their battles for them. So they're always in a constant flux of trying to prove the other one wrong and saying, well, like, no, trust me. He's going to go for me this time because he likes me better. I'm the more popular one with this guy, right? And then when you prove him wrong, they get frustrated and they just are like, you know what? You're dead to me. Right. And it's such a cool mechanic that they built into this game that I haven't seen in other ones. And it just added that whole like extra challenge plus just extra story, which really like grabbed me completely.
I really need to find one of these rooms because that sounds fun. I didn't realize you could do that.
Yeah, it's awesome. So hard.
Like, I think I saw one of those doors, but I didn't know what it was. I'm like, I'll just go for the key because I've been like going for a lot of the keys in the darkness because I want to at least unlock all the weapons. Right. And I actually been, I don't know if you do it, but every time you start a new run, like one of your weapons has a little darkness aura around it. Like, I'm always picking that weapon.
Same, yeah.
Just to get the extra. And it's cool. I don't know. There's, like you said, there's so many different things that you just keep finding over time. Like, I'm just starting out, and every time I start a new run, there's always like a few new things popping up. And from times I've watched people streaming it, it's like even when they're at like, when they've beaten the game, right, and they're doing like hardcore runs and all that, they're still finding new things in the story. And it's like, how long is this? Like, even if you make it to the end, like the story just keeps going. And it's like, I can see why this game blew up when it did. And I think it's going to be like a contender for maybe, I don't want to say game of the year, but it's definitely going to win like an award.
I don't know, man. For me right now, this is my game of the year. 100%.
Yeah.
Like, as of right now, from everything that I've played this year has been really cool with games, and there's a lot of really fun ones out there. But this is the one that has shown me the most innovation, the most like change, and the most growth in games that I've seen in a long time, while keeping a beautiful art style. Like, okay, Disco Elysium is fantastic, and we are in our episode, we both agree that that game is amazing through and through. But there's something about Hades that you get the excitement of like real gameplay, like actual fighting, but you have all the nuances of an amazing story where like they even throw in story bits, right? Like there's cutscenes and things like that in a roguelike where it's like, what is this, right? Like there's a whole scene that I ran into where, and when I was running through his room, it was like, oh, rest in the bed. And whenever I went to sleep, you wake up in the middle of the night and you start digging through your father's papers and you find out that Nyx isn't really spoilers. Nyx isn't really your mother, and it's actually Persephone, which is the real queen of the underworld. And then you find out like, oh, Persephone's not actually in hell anymore. She escaped. And then it's like, oh wait, maybe that's why that was a more motivation now to get out of hell, to go have this conversation with Persephone, who's actually your real mother. And then you have like a conversation tree with Hades and Nyx where Zagreus is pissed and he's like, you lied to me my whole life, telling me you're my mother and she's my mom, right? Like that in a roguelike is so crazy to have that kind of level of story and that level of lore built in. So just fantastic all the way through.
Yeah, and I think that's what really sets it apart is that the story stands out. You know, it's not lore based like we were talking about. And I'm really excited to keep continuing and finding things like you were just talking about, because it's like I've only died a few times, so I haven't seen too much story progression. I've been really just focusing on seeing how long it can last. And I mean, even that is fun. You know, I feel like in the beginning, the game has a good way of making it seem simple. Like once you beat the first boss and you're going to the second area, the hardest part for me was not jumping in lava.
Yeah, that was hard.
And once But I mean, also it really depends on your build. You know, this game has a lot of different variants of builds, and that's something I always love about these games because I love trying new weapons in general, like on RPGs or action games. And the variety here is cool. Like they feel different, and this game's a lot of fun with either controller or mouse and keyboard. I kind of switch it up depending what weapon I pick. You know, like, even though the aim assist in this game is actually really damn good, it's for the most part.
The bow and arrow, like, at first you would think like that bow and arrow is useless because of how many enemies are on the map, but the aim assist really helps out a lot. And my favorite weapon so far is the bow as of right now, just because it's fun. And I mean, I am switching it up depending on which one gives you an extra boost to the essence or whatever the purple orbs are.
Oh, yeah.
But that's just because, like, I mean, that's a clever way of making players want to continuously change out their build. And it's really smart in that aspect. But yeah, I mean, if I have a chance, I always end up going back to the bow.
The bow's great because you can really stand far away and hit people. Yeah. Like, I think the bow is probably the best beginning weapon to get kind of accustomed to things because you can really play it safe. Like, the special power being like a spread shot's really nice. Yeah. It clears out the boss rooms pretty easily. But
if you get chain lightning on your special, it's rad.
Oh, yeah. Like I had my spear with chain lightning and the flurry and dash, like, deflecting, and it was just, I was unstoppable.
Yeah.
And I wish that I could have kept going because I really wanted to expand this build more, but now it makes me more motivated to play the spear because I thought I was going to hate it.
Right.
I never play spears in any game, ever. For some reason, I just never found the weapon cool looking.
Yeah.
But in this game, like, I'm loving it. It's got a good range. It's the special power sucks in my opinion, but because I don't like tossing my weapon. Right. But it's good. It's a good game.
Yeah. Now, I'm curious to keep playing too because, I mean, eventually there's different variants of all the weapons too. So there's like 4 different swords, 4 different spears, and they each one have their own different abilities. And that's going to be like, there's so much to unlock in this game. And it just makes you want to continue playing and be cool with dying. Like, if you look through your book too, if you're interested in the story aspect of this game, it'll tell you how many times you need to talk to a certain player to unlock more about that player or more story from them. So, like, if you go up to, if you look at, like, Achilles, it'll say, like, 15 more conversations to unlock more story, which is really cool. So it's like, okay, well, fuck, I want to die 15 more times real quick, right? Like, you almost want to like, run in real quick and just get, like, a nectar real fast. Hopefully you get it real early and just end it. And just be like, okay, boop. Like, give me more. Feed me more story. I love it.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like, it kind of makes me want to die. Like, when you told me about that, I was like, I kind of just want to end this run just to see it progress, you know? Because I'm a person that I'm like, if it's going to progress the story, it must mean it's going to unlock more stuff for me. So it makes me want to do it, but I'm also, well, I'm already advancing pretty far. Like, I just want to keep going, you know?
It's a really good balance between that thought process.
Yeah, it definitely changes my play style in any of these kind of like rogue games.
Yeah.
Other than the ones that we've talked about, are there any other games of this genre that kind of either stand out to you or that you really like?
So, I mean, for me, I've loved these kind of games for a while, but I've always been interested in them. I like watching them, but there's always been that intimidation factor of getting into these games, right? So I feel like only fairly recently in the last couple of years have I actually started to kind of dive into them a little bit more and play them. Yeah. So for me, my frame of reference is a little bit more on the newer ones. So, I mean, like, Slay the Spire was actually the first big one that I played because I love card games. I've always been infatuated with them. So that was kind of like my first real, like inkling into roguelikes. Unless you count, like, Souls games, right? Like, Souls games, I beat them before, but I don't know if I would really count those as rogues.
Nah.
Because they're their own, like, fuck you genre, basically, right? It's
Yeah.
it's just punishment. Like I would call that genre just punishment. Here you go, have fun. You're gonna die. Enjoy it. So like those are my first like jumps into this one. So I think for me, I'm a little spoiled in that aspect because now like my frame of reference is going to be Hades and these kind of amazing games that have pushed this genre so far. And whenever I go back and play other ones, I'm probably just going to be like, well, I'll just go back to Hades. like I think that's kind of, unfortunately for me at least. I know that you have a lot more experience with these kind of games. So which one for you is like your standouts? Like which ones do you love?
I mean, definitely Hades stands out the most just because, like you said, it just makes you want to keep playing because the story. I mean, I'm looking at my Steam library right now of my roguelikes, and it's like, like, there's good ones on here. It just really depends, like, what you would want. Like, I know a really big one, if people like traditional, would be like Tales of Majile. I think that's how you say it. It looks like your classic roguelite, you know, the tiles, like you move on the tile-based system, and there's lore everywhere. It's very old school, and I mean, for a decade or so, I think the game still is free if you go to their website. If you buy it on Steam, you get some like special stuff, but the game is free, and it's huge. Like this game is probably one of the biggest roguelites, maybe compared to like Dwarf Fortress, but it's insane what this person has done for a free game. But I'm also not really much into that style anymore, but that's definitely a big one. I think other than Binding of Isaac, the other one that really got me into this genre is maybe FTL. I love the whole simulation of building the ship and having to watch everything, make sure it all works. Like that game was chaotic good. Like oh man, that's definitely a good one too. But you know, I mean, there's a lot of filler out there too with this genre. Some other standouts, maybe Darkest Dungeon, if you want something very, in my opinion, beautiful.
Yeah, artistically,
I mean, the voice acting is amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of multiplayer roguelikes out now too. Like there's
Risk of Rain and all
Don't
that.
Starve,
Yeah.
Risk of Rain. I think Risk of Rain, especially the second one, it's very easy to play. That's like if you want to have a good, fun, fast time, right? Then you look at Don't Starve, where it's more of a survival kind of game. And
that game is hard.
It's the thing I hate about that game is that I feel like
it's overly
when you die,
punishing.
there's nothing.
Yeah,
there's not an incentive to keep going. I have friends that love that game a lot, but it's just for me, I was never able to get into it like them. You know, I think for a good multiplayer experience, if you like Mega Man kind of games, 20XX, there's a sequel coming out soon too. That game was awesome. One of my friends and I beat it overnight one time. Like I went over there, we started like, I don't know, around 2, 3 in the morning, we finally beat it, and it was like accomplishment because the last stage or two of that gets intense. Like I love Mega Man growing up, but oh my god, that game gets so hard, but it's so enjoyable with another player. And I think these kind of games, even though I feel like they're meant to be played on your own, having someone else share the pain with you is just, it's fun.
I didn't know you could do that one multiplayer. That's cool.
Yeah, and they're different characters. So you have your Mega Man character, and the other one can be more of like a Zero or Base kind of character with the sword.
Yeah.
So it's really cool. The differences in the different builds is interesting. It's not a super advanced game like story wise, but it's a lot of fun. And I think that honestly, like all of the other roguelites that I'm looking at, like all the ones I mentioned kind of just stood out the most to me. Like there's a bunch of like really smaller ones depending like what people would want. But I think those are the big ones.
Yeah.
honestly. A lot of the big ones came out like maybe 5 years ago, but they're still being updated. They're still awesome.
There's something to say about that.
I don't know. I'm just a dude the Hades.
Yeah, right now Hades is on my radar for sure. But there's something to say about that where like some of these games came out multiple years ago and they're still updating them and they still have so much like love for them, like Spelunky, right? Like,
oh yeah,
that game.
I mean, it just got a sequel too.
Yeah, but it's just one of those where it's like there's something to these, right? Like there's an obvious like love for these games, and it just speaks to like how well they're designed, where they can stand the test of time and players can stand through this much punishment in a game and still really enjoy it, where they just keep coming back to it, which is great. I mean, like as a designer, that's exactly what you're looking for. And that's a really hard thing to do and find that balance. And when you do, just hold on tight. Just keep going with it. So,
I mean, it's kind of cool too. Like I'm looking at the different games and clicking through them, and you see like people doing fan art over these games, and it's cool seeing that each one of these, even though they're all different, have like a little fan base, and I don't know, it's kind of cool. I know it's kind of like random to bring that up, but there's just so much to these games, and it's cool seeing how people like enjoy different variations of them.
Yeah. No, I agree. Hey, maybe, you know what? Mega Man is probably one of the first big like roguelikes that I think about that I actually played. When you start thinking about that style, it's like when you die, you basically have to start over, right? And then I
mean, that's almost any game from that era, though.
Yeah.
You know, like you'll have like continuous lives, like 3 lives.
Mm-hmm.
But then once you die, like you're done. You know, I guess you could really put it towards like arcade-based games, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But
yeah. No, that's awesome. All right. Well, I think with that, I think I know what time it is, but do you know what time it is, Chris?
Please tell me the time.
Oh, I think it's about time for the question of the week. What do we have in store for our audience today?
I mean, I think it'll be a very easy question. Do you, listeners, enjoy dying repeatedly in hopes that you can advance? Or do you prefer a more traditional style game? I know these kind of games can be an acquired taste, but if there's any game out there in this genre that you like, doesn't matter if it's a roguelike or light, mystery dungeon, just let us know, because I'm always down to find out a new one, and I know I will dive into any of them that you guys bring up.
Yeah. Nice. All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for us today. I want to say thank you to all of you that have listened. Thank you for everything you guys do, and spread the word, because word of mouth is the fastest way and best way to get other people involved in our conversations and get us out there, right? So yeah, thank you again. Join us on Discord. Let us know. Answer that question that Chris just fed you, or just ask questions of your own, or just join in the conversation that's already out there. So once again, my name's Christian,
and I'm Chris.
And, thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye.